Hi, this is Greg Starkman with Platinum Method Coaching. Today I want to talk to you about beliefs, values, and Pavlov. It's been said that if you change your thoughts, you change the world. Also, it's never too late to be what you might have been. Steve Jobs once remarked, "Once you realize that everything around you was created by people who are no smarter than you are, you'll never be the same." I'd like to share a story with you. My friend and I went to a circus, and as my friend was passing the elephants, he suddenly stopped, confused by the fact that these huge creatures were being held by only a small piece of rope tied to their front leg. No chains, no cages. It was obvious that the elephants could at any time break away from the ropes they were tied to, but for some reason, they didn't try. My friend saw a trainer nearby, and he asked him, why were these beautiful, magnificent animals just standing there, making no attempt to get away? Well, he said, when they're very young and much smaller, we use the same size of rope to tie them, and at that age, it is enough to hold them. As they grow up, they're conditioned to believe that they cannot break away. They believe the rope can still hold them, so they never try to break free. My friend was amazed. These animals could at any time break free from their bonds, but because they believed they couldn't, they were stuck right where they were. Like the elephants, how many of us go through life hanging on to a belief that we cannot do something simply because we failed at it once before? So what are limiting beliefs? A limiting belief is something you accept about your life, yourself, or the world, or people in it that limits you in some way. Or stated more simply, a limiting belief is an energy block that prevents us from doing something. Some limiting beliefs we may learn when we're young from our friends or our families, or they might just be assumptions we've made that we thought were true, but they weren't. One example may be, you ask a girl out when you're young, and she says no. You may assume from that situation that girls don't like you, or worse yet, you're not good enough. We have to be careful when we build cause and effect relationships. We often do this without even thinking about it. Because something happened once or twice under certain circumstances, we assume it will always happen because of those circumstances. This is why it's necessary to keep an open mind and to question our belief in the world around us. So how do we do that? The following are some questions to help you find your limiting beliefs. What's a problem or limitation that's held you back for a while? What is it you'd like to do or have, except something's stopping you from getting it or doing it? What is it that really is stopping you from getting what you want? Why is this a problem? What does this mean? What must you believe to make this problem ever exist? What is it you believe about yourself that has made this a problem? What do you believe about the world that's made this a problem? What is this problem an example of? And what is this an example of? When did you decide that your problem was a problem? At what point in your life did you buy into this concept? What decision did you make that caused this problem to be born? What does this problem mean to you? What would your life be like if you didn't have this problem? These are just a few of the questions you can ask yourself. Now let's turn to patterns of unhelpful thinking. Sometimes we form limiting beliefs because we have certain patterns of unhelpful thinking. And if you recognize an unhelpful thought, then you can challenge it. Being aware of these common and unhelpful thought patterns can help you police them more efficiently. If you've ever seen The Secret, or you're familiar with the concept that whatever we think about we attract, we should focus on positive things. Mother Teresa once said she would not go to an anti-war rally, but she would go to a pro-peace rally. Here are some examples of typical unhelpful thought patterns. The first is predicting the future. When we feel anxious, it's common for us to spend much of our time thinking about the future and predicting what could go wrong, as opposed to just letting things be. In the end, most predictions we make about the future don't actually come to pass. We just waste our time and energy being upset about them and worried. For example, you predict the future by assuming you'll perform poorly at an interview, or you assume someone will reject you before you've even asked them out. Think about the last time you predicted the future in an unrealistic or unhelpful way. Next is mind reading. This is when we assume that we know what other people are thinking, usually about us, without any real evidence to suggest it's true. We can also make assumptions about why someone said something or behaved in a certain way, and be quick to conclude that it has something to do with us. For example, my boss thinks I'm stupid, or my work colleague is ignoring me, and perhaps she really just has other things on her mind. What happened the last time you made an assumption or jumped to a conclusion about someone else was thinking without any real evidence to suggest it was true? The third one is catastrophizing. People commonly catastrophize when they're anxious. This is when we blow things completely out of proportion and view the situation as a catastrophe, even though the problem may be quite small. How did you feel about yourself or the world the last time you overgeneralized a situation or a group of people? Imagining the worst-case scenario. When we make predictions that the worst-case scenario is going to happen, despite the fact that we may have been successful in this area in the past. For example, you're asked to give a presentation to a group of people and you think, I'm going to get in there and completely screw this up, even though you've given many successful presentations in the past. You may assume someone hates you because you didn't reply to their text within 10 seconds, or you expect to lose your job because of a simple mistake you've made. Think about the last time you blew something completely out of proportion in your mind. How did you feel afterwards? Next is focusing on the negatives. When we're anxious, we commonly develop tunnel vision, where we focus solely on the negative aspects of situations without considering the positive aspects. Sometimes the whole picture can be tainted by a single negative detail. For example, focusing on one person who doesn't like you rather than the other 20 who do. Think about the last time you focused more on the negatives than the positives. What would have changed if you hadn't? Next is overgeneralizing. Based on one instance in the past or present, you make an assumption that all others will follow a similar pattern in the future. A sense of helplessness often accompanies such overgeneralizations. For example, just because one ex-partner cheated on you, you believe that all men or women are bad. How'd you feel about the last time you imagined the worst-case scenario of either situation or set of circumstances that you were facing? Finally, I want to talk about labeling. This is when we label ourselves based on our behavior in specific situations. We define ourselves by one specific behavior, usually a negative one, and fail to consider the other positive characteristics and actions. For example, I'm always anxious even though this is not always the case. Or I'm not good enough because you failed at something, even though there are many other things you are good at. What labels do you currently define yourself by, and are they complementary? If not, which ones do you need to ditch? Take some time to review these unhelpful thought patterns and see if you can identify them within yourself. How many of them apply to you? If so, it's time to get to policing your thoughts. Remember, you attract and you become what you think about. Now we are going to change gears and talk about mistaken beliefs. But first, we're going to pay a visit to an old friend of ours and brush up on a little physiology history that you're undoubtedly familiar with. Pavlov and his dogs. Like many great scientific advances, Pavlovian condition, aka classical conditioning, was discovered accidentally. During the 1890s, Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov was looking at salivation in dogs' response to being fed when he noticed that the dogs would begin to salivate whenever he entered the room, and he wasn't even bringing them any food. At first, this was something of a nuisance, not to mention a mess. Pavlov started with the idea that some of the things the dog did not need to learn. For example, dogs don't learn to salivate when they see food. This reflex is hardwired into the dog. In behaviorist terms, it's an unconditioned response, i.e., stimulus-response connection that requires no learning. In behaviorist terms, we describe it as unconditioned food, stimulus, leads to unconditioned response, salivate. Pavlov showed the existence of the unconditioned response by presenting a dog with a bowl of food and measuring its salivary secretions. However, when Pavlov discovered that any object or event which the dog learned to associate with food, such as his lab assistant, would trigger the same response, he realized he had made an important scientific discovery. Accordingly, he devoted the rest of his career to studying this type of learning. Pavlov knew that somehow the dogs in his lab had learned to associate food with his lab assistant. This must have been learned because at one point the dogs did not do it, and there came a point when they started, so their behavior had changed. A change in behavior of this type must be the result of learning. In his experiment, Pavlov used the bell as a neutral stimulus. Whenever he gave food to his dogs, he also rang the bell. After a number of repeats of this procedure, he tried the bell on its own. As you might expect, the bell on its own now caused an increase in salivation. So the dog had learned an association between the bell and the food, and a new behavior had been learned. Because this response was learned or conditioned, it's called a conditioned response. The neutral stimulus had become a conditioned stimulus. So by now you're probably asking yourself, what does this have to do with beliefs? Well, we all have mistaken beliefs. And like Pavlov's dogs, sometimes they are based on things that happened once in the past, so we generalize they're going to happen again in the future. And sometimes they're just outright wrong. Mistaken beliefs are where negative self-talk stems from. They are deep-rooted beliefs or assumptions that we hold about ourselves, other people, or life in general. When sometimes they may be based on events that actually occurred, but most often such beliefs are incorrect, unhelpful, and potentially damaging. We usually learn these beliefs from our parents, friends, teachers, and the society we grew up in. Most people tend to take these beliefs for granted, and they don't even realize they're beliefs at all. We just assume that they're true. I'm from the East Coast. A long time ago, I received an offer to move to California and work for a large financial services company, one that's famous for its credit cards. While I appreciated the offer, my belief that I was a New Yorker and I would never stay in any place like California, it was just too different from who I was. So I came out here with a belief, but I soon learned that it was a mistaken belief. What a wonderful surprise. I've now been living in California for over 30 years. So as they say, the rest is history. Thank God I was able to overcome that mistaken belief, or else I'd still be trapped there on the subway. So what are some other examples of mistaken beliefs? Life is a constant struggle. I should always act nice no matter how I'm feeling. I am nothing unless other people love and approve of me. I am not important. My feelings and needs are not important. I can't cope with scary or difficult situations. Mistaken beliefs that you hold about yourself and the way life is are the root cause of the anxiety you experience. Choosing to let go of such beliefs will help you feel less worried, stressed, and unhappy. Mistaken beliefs hold us back from the things we want in life. For example, I'm not smart enough. I don't have time. I don't have the talent. I'm too fat. I'm too ugly. I'm too short. I'm too this. I'm too that. But at an even deeper level, I don't deserve the things I want. Believing this means you won't even try to get what you want, which is actually the surest way to guarantee that you won't. Mistaken beliefs set limits on your self-worth and are usually based on the idea that self-worth depends on something outside of ourselves. For example, material possessions, social status, wealth, or the love or approval of another person. Believing that my worth depends on the things I achieve, or that success is everything, places your self-worth outside of you, and it prevents you from realizing that you have many of the qualities and talents, regardless of your outer achievements. As your self-esteem develops, you develop to respect and believe in yourself, aside from the things you've achieved, and without being dependent on anyone else to feel secure about yourself. We need to be aware of our own mistaken beliefs. We've all developed our own set of mistaken beliefs through hearing direct messages from other people, like nice girls don't get angry, or through reactions criticized by other people, for example, I am worthless. Or maybe ignored by others, for example, my needs don't matter. Or being rejected by others, I'm unlovable. Unfortunately, what tends to happen in holding the beliefs is we act in a way, and as a result others treat us in a way, that confirms them, and this belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's crucial that we understand how our own set of mistaken beliefs came about before we can go about reprogramming ourselves with more functional and supportive beliefs. Here are a few examples of mistaken beliefs and maybe counterstatements we can use to replace them. I am powerless. I am a victim of outside circumstances. As a counterstatement, we should try something like, I'm responsible for myself, and I'm in control of my own life. I can't determine the circumstances, but I can determine my attitude toward them. Let's do another. If I take a risk, I will fail, and if I fail, other people will reject me. A counterstatement might be, it's all right for me to take risks, and it doesn't matter if I fail. I can learn from every mistake I make. It's okay for me to be successful. Next, life is a constant struggle. There must be something wrong if life seems easy, pleasurable, or fun. A good counterstatement might be, life is pleasurable and full. It's all right for me to relax and enjoy myself. Life is an adventure in which I'm learning to accept both ups and downs. Another one is, I'm not important. My feelings and needs are not important. A good counterstatement would be, I'm unique and I'm a valuable individual. My needs and my feelings are just as important as anyone else's. Here are a few questions to ask yourself and maybe challenge your mistaken beliefs. What is the evidence that supports this belief? If I look objectively at all my life experience, what is the evidence or proof that this belief is true? Is this belief always true for me? Does this belief consider the whole picture? Does it take into consideration both the positive and negative ramifications? Does this belief encourage my own peace of mind and well-being? And finally, did I choose this belief, or has it developed from the influence of my friends and family or others when I was growing up? What counterstatements can you begin using to start challenging other mistaken beliefs you may have? Remember, whatever these values or mistaken beliefs you have had in the past, they no longer have anything to offer you, and they serve only to create stress and anxiety, so it's time to let them go. But first we need to identify them. I want you to do a self-reflection exercise. If you need to, you can pause this. Take 5 or 10 minutes to reflect and consider any mistaken beliefs that you may be holding on to. Work through the following questions and then consider what counterstatements you could use to begin challenging this belief today. Here's an example of a mistaken belief. You can use it or come up with your own. I'll never be able to get a better job that pays me what I'm worth. Okay, now that you're back, let's take a look at our core beliefs. You can never quit. Winners never quit and quitters never win. Believe and act as if it were impossible to fail. Now that we've looked at mistaken beliefs and patterns of unhelpful thinking, as they say in the third Indiana Jones movie, it's time to ask yourself what you truly believe. Questions are a powerful tool as they force us to reflect and find deep answers. Deep questions force us to examine ourselves, and often they challenge our beliefs about what we know to be true. Questions can be used to develop insight, uncover mistaken beliefs, and adopt a new perspective about who we are and what we want in life. The following questions will give you further insight into who you are, what you believe, and what you want. Feel free to pause this at any point and answer the questions one by one, or you can go through it, listen to all of them, however you want to do it. But listen to all the questions at some point and write down the answers, because this is important. The essence of this exercise demonstrates who we are. So it's about time we get to know ourselves. First one is, in what ways am I living outside my integrity and compromising my personal values? What have I left unfinished or unresolved that currently needs my attention? What deep needs do I have that are not getting met? What am I fighting against that I can choose to release? What legacy am I leaving behind in the world after I'm gone? In what ways could I be more engaged in life? In what ways am I not behaving authentically? Who or what am I tolerating that I do not want in my life? How am I making choices based on I should as opposed to I desire? In what ways am I behaving as a reactor instead of an initiator? How am I not accepting someone that I love for who they really are? How do I diminish other people in order to make myself feel better? Are there any areas in which I'm holding back forgiveness, and if so, where? In what ways am I manipulating someone to get my own needs met? What consistent negative thought patterns do I have? In what ways do I allow other people to cross my boundaries? What weaknesses or vulnerabilities am I afraid of to share with those that I love? Am I completely present with those that I love when I'm with them? In what areas do I lack mentality? Are my beliefs about life, religion, my spouse, my family, my children, the absolute truth? How's my living space a reflection of my inner world? In what ways am I compromising my health or mistreating my body? What am I passionate about? How can I spend more time pursuing the things I'm passionate about? Well, I hope you're still with me. This was just a sampling of some of the questions to think about. I hope I haven't overloaded your brain. Feel free to pause it and come back to it later. If not, let's take a look at values, which would be one of the last parts of this section. What are your core values and how do you define them? In order to answer this question, we need a clear understanding of what values are. Our values are the things that we believe are important in relation to how we live our lives. Our values should ideally determine our priorities in life. And they're generally the measures we use to determine if life is heading in the direction we want it to. Life is usually going pretty well. We feel content and satisfied with the decisions we make in the way that we match our values. When our decisions don't match our values, that's when we start feeling anxiety. That's when we don't feel so good about ourselves. So, to avoid this, what do? We have to make a real effort to identify what our values actually are. So how does understanding our values help you? Whether we recognize them or not, values exist. We can make life much easier for ourselves by acknowledging our values and making plans and decisions that honor them and are congruent with them. If you value family, but your job requires you to work 60-hour weeks, well, this is going to cause conflict and stress. Or perhaps you're in a competitive sales environment, but you don't value competition. Or you think you're likely to have high job satisfaction? It's situations like these that understanding our values can really help. When we have a good understanding of our values, we can use them to make important life decisions and answer the big questions such as, should I leave my job? Should I compromise my standards? Should I follow tradition or take a new path? Should I accept a job promotion? Should I start my own business? Taking time to understand the real priorities in our lives will enable us to determine the best direction and help us to work towards achieving our life goals. How do we define our values? Defining your personal values will help you to discover what's truly important to you. It's the best way to start doing this is by reflecting on your life and identifying times when you felt really positive and confident that you were making good choices. Think about times in your life when you were happiest. Consider both your personal life and your career. What were you doing? Were you with other people? Who were they? What other factors contributed to your happiness? Well, if you've stuck with me this far, hopefully by now you have a better idea about what your values and your beliefs are. Perhaps you have to go back and revisit everything and think about some of the questions I asked. You may have even discovered some mistaken beliefs or patterns of unhelpful thinking that may have been holding you back. Well, I hope this has been helpful in understanding your beliefs and values. This is Greg from Platinum Method Coaching, where we help professionals find meaning and success in their lives by aligning their talents with their passions, enabling them to realize their full potential. We offer personalized coaching for landing the job you want or effecting positive change in your life. So call us today at 800-217-7113 and take the first step to bringing your life back into balance. You can also email me at greg@platinummethod.coaching.com or visit our website at platinummethod.coaching.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or any of your other favorite social media platforms. So until next time, remember, it's never too late to turn back when you find yourself on the wrong path. Let's make it a great day.